Om Shanti, continued from part 12, heading Om Radhe. Out of the increasing numbers of people who took advantage of this knowledge to improve their lives, one girl stood out from all the rest. She took Baba's message completely to her heart. She wedded herself totally to God. She surrendered her every thought to His direction. Because of this total dedication, she transformed herself into one of the world's extraordinary personalities. Her name was Radha, and they called her Om Radhe. She seemed a veritable goddess, not merely because of her long, flowing black hair and flashing eyes, but because of her virtuous and powerful personality. She was awesome in demeanor, yet discreet and merciful at the same moment. Her intellect was legendary, and she was able to digest Baba's knowledge as no one else could. To revise it in her mind and to bring out its many subtle implications. In college also, she had always been first in her class. Now, she was able to mobilize all her intellectual resources in the service of God. And she became Baba's right hand in the work of upliftment of society. Om Radhe was also one of the sweetest singers in India. A special kind of divinity seemed to animate her voice. From the moment she first heard Baba speak knowledge, her mind began dancing with joy, and it never stopped throughout the rest of her life. In comparison to that bliss, she recognized instantly that all the sensual happiness the world had to offer was without taste or merit. Here was the true nectar of life. She determined immediately to adopt a life of celibacy and yoga, and to devote herself to world benefit. Om Radhe saw that Baba was not an ordinary human being, but a different order of personality. Why else did his forehead shine like a jewel, or divine intoxication flow from his lotus eyes, or such attraction emanate from his voice, that those who heard him chant Om would go into ecstatic trance. Om Radhe sang like an uncaged bird, and her songs were balm to the heart. Here are some words from one of her early songs when she first encountered this institution. Oh friends, what shall I show you? And how can I show you what I saw? What I saw in Om Mandali. Oh friends, how can I describe such joy? The voice of Om like an arrow pierced my mind, and calm and quiet I became, and all my troubles, all my stories, all my sorrows died away. Before Om Radhe had begun to come to satsang, or had ever met Baba, for that matter, her presence had been pre-cognized. Jashodaji, Baba's wife, once experienced in a vision, for example, that Radhe would be the Empress Lakshmi in the future, and that she, Jashoda, would give her the kingdom. Once Radhe had arrived and surrendered, the meaning of that vision became clear, for Radhe became a storehouse of godly thoughts and energy. And so, her name was changed to Jagadamba Saraswati, the goddess of knowledge, the world mother, for her secret role would truly be that. Her qualifications for the role were matchless. Next heading, Family Reactions. Dada did his best to interest his own relatives in taking Shiv Baba's inheritance, believing that, any good work of charity should begin at home, especially now that people from all over the country were arriving to behold the divine phenomenon of God's descent and receiving countless blessings from a second's contact. Why indeed should Dada's own physical relations not prosper as well from this event? He could not let them pass up such good fortune without making an effort. Dada's wife and daughter-in-law had always been religious-minded anyway, and had always had the highest respect for Dada, who, during his entire life, had never swerved from the path of integrity and honesty. They knew without a trace of doubt that someone else was regularly taking over Dada's body and speaking through his mouth, and the power which the other personality was exerting was so intense and blissful, the guidance offered was so high and noble, the language so poetic, the idea so liberating, that it was clear to them that this person could be none other than he, Shiva, the Supreme Soul. So, they did their best to follow his directions. They practiced establishing themselves in soul consciousness. They made continuous efforts to integrate in their minds the various points of knowledge. They constantly worked on improving their level of virtue and detachment, finding them well set on the right path. Dada's attention turned to his older daughter. Before Shiv Baba's arrival, he had married her into a wealthy Sindhi family. Now, after acquiring divine knowledge, he felt he made a mistake tying her down into a relationship involving lust. Even though he had been ignorant of the necessity for celibacy at that time, he felt that he was the cause of her downfall, and therefore his duty was to show her path of purity. He succeeded in this with the help of God. Here is what this daughter, who is known as Dadi Nirmal Shanta. She is today the zonal head of Bengal and Eastern India, serving from the Calcutta branch of the Godly University, has to say about the experience. Before becoming God's instrument, my father's life was really already full of princely decorum and devotion. So Papa gave me in marriage to a person who was wealthy and of great prestige, the Mukhi of the city. There was nothing lacking in my father-in-law's house as far as worldly happiness was concerned. Before I was married, when I still lived with Baba, I was also happy and completely carefree. Baba never allowed us to feel that anything was lacking, and he brought us up with great love and attention. I did not realize how much until later. Yet, I had never had any attraction for puja or worship. I had everything, so what should I pray for? But once the Supreme Father Shiva entered my father's body, everything changed for me. There seemed to be no more love and attention coming to us from Baba. Of course, when I went to visit him, I felt that he was more gentle and loving than ever. But it was different. Now, he was intoxicated in divine love. The whole world had become his family. I could not speak to my parents as before. Now, they made me hear God's knowledge at every opportunity. It was disconcerting, and I didn't understand at first that it was all because of their concern for my welfare. They wanted me to follow this highest path, not to miss this golden opportunity. But, at first, the truth of it all passed me by. I only saw that they had become different and more distant. Yet, one day, the reality of what was occurring finally registered in my mind. A festival was being celebrated and Baba invited me for dinner. When I got there, I saw a number of girls and mothers listening intently to the knowledge, while another group was enjoying a dance. It was not an ordinary dance. They seemed in a state of deep concentration, and I went closer to investigate. At first I didn't like the dance they were doing, but then I stopped watching the movements of their feet and began to inspect their faces. They wore a look that I had never seen before, but that I recognized instantly. A look of absolutely otherworldly bliss. They were in a trance, completely unaware of the world around them. What scenes were they seeing in their mind's eyes? And how could they all be so attuned to each other's movements? The dance became more intricate, and it soon dawned on me that actually these women had a great deal of talent. In fact, not even professional dancers could have moved with such a great grace and skill. They never used to dance at all. How could they be doing this so perfectly now? I knew they were not in an ordinary state of consciousness, but I had no idea that internally they had been transported to Satyug, to heaven, and that they were dancing with Sri Krishna himself. For the moment they were living in the future, in their next lifetime in the golden age. It was this extraordinary vision conferred by God which gave them the power of such a dance. On their faces I saw peace, love, and a unity with God. I felt the energy, the sense of grace, the power of purity which charged the atmosphere. When the dance appeared to be over, I asked one of them what she had experienced, but I saw right away that she was still deep in that consciousness, far beyond sound, and not yet able or ready to leave that happy place in order to explain. It must have been difficult for her even to speak. In a slow, barely audible voice, she said, "I will tell you tomorrow." I had a tremendous desire to hear what she would say. So, I went to Baba and told him to send me the card tomorrow, and I would come. Baba said, "All right, daughter, let us see tomorrow." I didn't feel happy with this answer. I said, "Baba, why do you speak like this?" Baba said, "We have the idea to send the car, but let us see what happens tomorrow." I had been brought up with such total solitude, receiving everything I had asked for, that I was unprepared for this response. Baba had never spoken to me before in such an ambiguous manner, and in my ignorance, I took it to be an insult. Before, if I had told Baba to bring down the stars from the heaven, he would have done so. Now, he was hesitating even to offer me the use of the car. I got very angry and left the house. But Baba followed me, put me in the car, and drove me back to my father-in-law's house, making sure I arrived safely. Yet, I felt he was just trying to patch things up. And as I got down from the car at my destination, I said in a huff, "If you don't send me the car tomorrow, I will not come." I remember very clearly what Baba said then, because it struck me to the quick. His eyes were laughing through his voice was subdued. "Daughter," he said, "would you really know what is going to happen tomorrow?" I responded, "Whatever happens tomorrow, we will see tomorrow." And I went inside. I fell asleep almost immediately, but around 2 or 2:30 in the morning, I awoke with a start. A flood of light filled the room, unearthly light. I knew it had no physical source. In the midst of the illumination was Baba. At first, I could not believe what I was seeing. When the vision faded, I closed my eyes and tried to sleep again. I told myself that because of my talk with Papa earlier that evening, he had come into my mind in such a powerful way that it was nothing more than a kind of a dream. Yet, after a little while, the room was once more illuminated, once more inundated with the divine light. It was beyond belief, but I forced myself to sleep again. It was too much for my mind to comprehend, and yet there was to be no escape from the truth. For a third time, Baba appeared, and this time Sri Krishna was standing beside him. Baba spoke to me in the sweetest tone I had ever heard. "Daughter, wake up. You have to do the work of world upliftment." His words were like arrows which pierced my heart. I felt transformed in a single instant. "Baba," I spoke in reply, "you really do have God within you. I did not recognize you. I will do whatever you ask." I fell asleep again with blissful feeling spreading throughout my mind. By morning, the visionary scene had repeated itself many times over in my consciousness, and I felt I should go immediately to see Baba. But as soon as I tried to get out of bed, I began to feel such tremendous bodily pain that I fell back helpless. I remembered Baba's words, "Daughter, whatever happens, let us see." The words rang in my ears. He had known the future. He had known. I fell deep into thought, all my pain forgotten. All I could think of was Baba. That God had actually entered my Baba. All the knowledge he had spoken to me so often, I tried to recapture it now. I had taken it all so lightly. We could not recognize him in his true identity, being in an ordinary human form. Such power, yet we would not recognize it. At sunset, Baba himself came to see me. When he came in the room, I began to shed tears of love. I could not control myself. I was filled with repentance and recognition. I embraced him. "Baba," I said through my tears, "now I have recognized you. Now I will do what you asked me to do." From that day, I had entered a new life. To be continued further. Om Shanti.